Work.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
Hey, should people still say that, or is that old fashioned?
Okay, good morning. Thank you everyone for joining. Label, Levi, Yossi. We are good morning. You could see the Gemara on the screen. Are you able to see the Gemara about where Esther was standing?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So we're up to the last statement of Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina. The Gemara brought several statements of Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rabbi Chanina. We should be holding here 15b2 in the art scroll.
Just get some extra silver.
Says Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Chanina. Aser Kadosh Baruch Hu, Liyos Atara B'Rosh Kol Tzadik V'Tzadik. In the future, Hashem will be a crown on the head of each and every righteous person. Meaning, in the future, when Mashiach comes, Hashem will rest His Shechina on the head of every single tzaddik. There's a pasuk, a verse, which we're going to see, says soon, Atersein B'Rishayin. In the future, the tzaddikim, the holy ones, will sit with crowns on their head. It means that the Shechina will be on the head of every single tzaddik. Shenemar, as it is written, B'yoyim ahu yeh Hashem tzivakos lateres tzvi. We're opening it up in the next tab. It says on that day, and we're going to go. The Gemara will now, Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rabbi Chanina, we'll go through these next three psukim, the next three verses in Yeshaya, and he'll explain them word by word. So we'll see the psukim inside. So it's Yeshaya chapter 28, talking about what will be l'ased lavai in the future when Mashiach comes. According to the Rambam, it means in Olam Haba, in the world to come, like in Gan Eden, we'll have eternal bliss. According to the Ravid and the Ramban, it talks about l'ased lavai in the future after Mashiach comes. We'll still be living in a physical world and physical body. This has to do with the general discussion, machlokas, the argument between the Rambam and the Ramban. What will be during the times of Mashiach? Will we be in a physical world, have a physical Beis HaMikdash, have a physical spiritual rewards? Or is the ultimate going to be everything spiritual, all in the world to come? So it says, on that day, Hashem shall be Lateres Tzvi. Ateres means a crown. V'litzfidas tifara. And a diadem, which is also another type of crown of beauty. L'sh'ar amay. L'sh'ar means for the shirayim, for the remnants of the Jewish people. Whoever is left, Hashem will become the crown. Before Mashiach comes, there'll be a lot of tumult in the world. A lot of people will be lost. And for the remnants that will survive, Hashem will be a crown of glory. The Shechina will be a crown of glory. And Hashem will sit in a spirit of judgment on them. And Hashem will be the strength for those who were battling at the gates. Maamar will explain all these psukim. And even those people which Hashem will sit for them in judgment because they were in battle for Hashem, even for those tzaddikim, nevertheless, even those people also sinned through wine, and they staggered, they fell over because they had such strong drink. Even the prophets, even the priests, even the great people, they fell prey to addiction, they fell prey to strong drink, and they became confused because of wine. Shagu baraya, they reeled in their vision, they couldn't see properly. Haku plilia, they stumbled in judgment. So these are these three verses, and the Gemara of Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rabbi Chanina will now explain these three psukim. And this is the final statement, the seventh statement of Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina, before we return to explaining the Gemara, the Megillah, albeit shortly. Says the Gemara. Says Rabbi Chanina, Elazar Rabbi Chanina, Hashem will be a crown on every single tzaddik's head. As it said on that day, Yi Hashem tzvakas, the Lord of hosts shall be a crown of glory, a diadem of beauty. My la'teres tzvi v'litzifidas tifara. What does it mean that Hashem will be a crown of glory? The Shekhinah will be a crown of glory and a diadem v'litzifidas of beauty. So the Gemara explains, what does it mean the Shekhinah is on a head of a tzaddik? And what type of tzaddik will be merited 15 AB, 15 B1, will be merited to have the Shekhinah on his head. Says the Gemara, what is the meaning that he will be a crown of glory and a diadem of beauty? Talking about those who do the will of Hashem. So tzvi, which means a diadem, a beauty, can mean tzivyoinoi, the desire of Hashem. Mitzapim litif'artoi, are always yearning for the glory of Hashem. The word tzivyon in Aramaic means ratzon. And the Ritva says that when Hashem created the world, litzivyoinam, in myriads, in many types of different ways Hashem wanted to do. When a tzaddik, when a righteous person does a mitzvah, he doesn't do a mitzvah because his seichel, his wisdom, his logic told him to do a mitzvah. He doesn't do a mitzvah because of derech eretz, it's the right thing to do. He doesn't do a mitzvah because he's going to get a reward. He only does a mitzvah because he wants to give nachas, pleasure to Hashem. So when it says la'oisen tzivyoinoi, hateresvi mean those who make Hashem happy, those whose only desire is that Hashem should be revealed in this world, and Hashem's Shekhinah should be revealed in the world, and this is called Tiferes. This is from the Ben Ish Chai. So Ma'ila Teres Vila Oisin Tzivyoinoi. Oisin Tzivyoinoi means those who make themselves, those who do the will of Hashem, and they bring Hashem's desire. The only kavanah is to do Hashem's desire. Like it says in the beginning of Pirkei Avos, Al tiyu kavadim misham shemesarav amanas lakabel pras. Don't be like a servant who serves his master to receive a reward. Do the mitzvah not having a mind to receive a reward. So what are they doing the mitzvah for? Because Hashem wants it. And that's what it means over here in the pasuk, ateres tiferes. Lamatzpin tifartoi. Yochel.
I once went to a chasana, a Polish chasana.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a Maamar, but the Kabbalah explained they had a badchen.
Yeah.
He was dancing around and singing in this because the chassan. And when you stand under the chuppah, don't be a fool. You should hear trach dashmis.
Yochel akol. So you might think
So that is, do it amanas lakabel pras.
saying what nowadays whatever you do it's good as long as you do it. Okay.
Oh, and you get the pras.
Get the pras also. Yachol akol, the Gemara asks, you might, and he's explaining that the pasuk is saying, you might think to say that whoever does what Hashem wants will receive this reward. The Shekhinah will be revealed on them, the Shekhinah will be on their head. Even if you're a Baal Gaiva, even if you're arrogant. Meaning, obviously not a very high level of arrogance. It says in Mesechta that whoever is arrogant, he pushes away the Shekhinah Right. So it means he must have a little bit of not arrogance, but of self-pride. It's called self-esteem, in the words, the dear words of Rabbi Torsky, Olav Shalom. But you have to have a certain amount of pride in your work. Otherwise, you're not going to want to do your work.
When did he pass away?
Passed away 2 years ago. And the Rav Shimon Bar Yochai said, whoever has a gaiva, it's like he's serving idols, like he doesn't believe in Hashem. It's like Chanina Bar Chana says that he's like he had relations with every single forbidden relation in the Torah. So what's the Gemara asking over here? Yachal Akal, you might think that Shechina would rest even on a Baal Gaiva, even on someone who is arrogant. It means that someone was a little bit of pride, but that pride that he has, he thinks, so whatever I did it, it's results of my own effort. And if I didn't put this effort in, it wouldn't have been successful. The reason it's successful is because I put the effort in. Instead of saying, I put the effort in, but the blessing came from Hashem, he says, I put the effort in, and the blessing at least came from my efforts. You know, you can't discount what I'm doing. So you might think that such a person will be merited to have the Shekhinah rest on him, because at least he recognizes that Hashem gave him the bracha, but he gave the bracha to me because I'm the hardest worker. The Torah says, L'sha'ar amay. And you go to the last words of this verse, in Yeshaya says, Rabbi Chanina, it says, to the remnant of his people. So he says, don't read the word l'sha'ar, to the remnant, rather read it the word shirayim. You know what shirayim is?
Oh, sure, actually.
What is shirayim?
When you go over to Chassidish Rebbe,
very good.
I don't think they do it in the Lubavitch, but if you're having a part of his food, you know, to get the
right.
From his kedusha inside.
So by Chassidish Rebbe, right, you want to have part of his kedusha. So if he has he eats a little bit of food, and they all go and they grab the rest of the plate because they want to have the leftovers of the tzaddik. It's called shirayim.
And did they do it in Lubavitch too? Or?
So Lubavitch didn't do it.
There was a few years when they did until they never stopped it. He said he gave the plate with the cake for somebody to give out. But they were hopping and people were running up. As soon as they would stand up and leave, the whole bunch of people would run up
right.
to there.
So,
but then the Rebbe stopped it. He didn't want it.
It worked a little bit different because the shirayim over there was that people would wait till the Rebbe left in order to do it.
No, as he was walking out.
As the Rebbe was walking out. Right. So that was like that type of shirayim. It wasn't a shirayim like in front of the Rebbe's face to do it. And there was one time a chassid who was not Chabad chassid came to the Rebbe for Farbrengen, and he didn't know the way things work, and he thought it's the way his Chassidish Rebbe works by all Chassidish Rebbes. So as soon as the Rebbe started eating something or taking something, he started grabbing it from the plate. He was the only one who was doing it. So the Rebbe told him that the Chabad, our custom is that we don't take shirayim from the tzaddik, and the Rebbe says because by Chabad the shirayim are not mezaka, they're mechayev. Usually you say you have the leftovers of the tzaddik's food and you have a schus, a merit, right? So the Rebbe gave out koshel bracha. How many blessings and miracles came from the koshel bracha, the extra wine, right? So the Rebbe says by Chabad, the shirayim, the leftovers, is mechayev you. It obligates you. It means you have to be worthy of eating it or of having it, and you have to hold yourself in a very high spiritual level. So that's why we don't give shirayim. It's not mezakeh, it's not a schus, it's a chiyuv.
Yeah, I'm talking like a good Chassidish. At least he tried to go.
At least he tried. Correct. But like Rabbi Karp said, that eventually I think the Rebbe stopped it, and the Rebbe, right? I mean,
he would give the plate with the cake
before he left. Plate with the mazonis before he left. He would give it out.
Either to Berlin or somebody.
Rabbi Yeruslavsky many times.
Yeah.
Yeruslavsky who ran the Chnasis Archim.
Yeah.
Right. But if you read Zalman Jaffe's diaries, have you ever read them? My encounter with the Rebbe. He's very humorous. He's an Englishman. And Shmulu's father-in-law. And so, like he describes his first time he's by the Rebbe, and it's in the early 60s, and as the Rebbe got up to leave, and suddenly all the young boys started jumping on the Rebbe's plate to grab the leftover mazonis that was on the cake. And he says, this was twice as, if you combine rugby with American football, and this was twice as rough. So Shirayim means leftovers. So if somebody holds themselves like leftovers, that they don't hold themselves as important, small and unimportant, whoever holds himself in high esteem will not merit to have the Shekhinah. Someone who holds himself in a humble manner, they will merit to have the Shekhinah.
What's the difference again?
Which is, if someone is arrogant or somebody is humble. So someone is like Shirayim, like leftovers, which nobody looks at, doesn't look at himself as any importance. So then they will be merited that the Shekhinah should rest on them. Like we said, according to the Rambam, it's going to be all Olam Haba, all spiritual. The Rambam holds that there will be Tchias Amesim, resurrection of the dead. Mashiach will come. But afterwards, it's not the ultimate goal to live in a physical world. According to the Rambam, the ultimate goal is to be, afterwards, everyone who lives in the world will be elevated and have Olam Haba, the world to come forever. And at that point, we will have the Atara, the Shekhinah on our heads. The Ramban holds, and the Ravid holds, that when there will be Tchias Amesim, and we will live forever. There will be no death, all in a physical sense, in a physical world.
Yeah, and actually, the Rambam actually, because listen, it's more of a book. We only do this with philosophy. Delivery. When we talk as far as Olam Haba.
The Rambam, he wrote the biggest sefer of halachas.
Oh yeah, it's more actually more in the book, but she was ready, to fit the philosophical basis. To talk as far as actually the spiritual life, Olam Haba. The verse doesn't talk about resurrection. So he was accused of not believing in it. So then he wrote a sefer, which she was saying as far as resurrection, but saying that afterwards people would die and go to the spiritual world, whereas the Ramban says that
According
exactly.
I'm saying is according to the Ramban, since we'll be in a physical world, there will be a physical crown on everybody's head. According to the Ramban, well, it'll be an actual crown. When it means the Shekhinah will be the crown, it means that Hashem will put the crown on their head. And that's according to the Ravid and the Ramban. And Chassidus actually paskins like the Ravid and the Ramban in this regard, that when Mashiach comes, it will be in a physical world, and then there are dozens of Maamar and Chassidus will explain why the Kavanah, specifically Olam Haza, this specific world, and why the essence, the Atzmus of Hashem is in this physical world. But then,
the physical will be transformed. In other words.
Correct. We'll be able to see godliness, the essence of Hashem, down here in a physical world.
Then you say they'll die again, then go into the spiritual?
So that's according to the Rambam. But according to the Ramban, they won't die again. Everyone will be coming down. Those who died will be coming back. The Gemara continues to explain the next pasuk, the next verse, which says, "U'ruach mishpat," and a spirit of judgment. So the pasuk is counting out over here the great the reasons and the great things that a tzaddik can do in order to merit that in the future, at the times of the redemption, the Shekhinah should rest on him. So one of the things that tzaddik qualities that he should have is l'ruach mishpat, and a spirit of justice. What is a spirit of justice? That it's written, spirit of judgment. It's written in Yeshaya. So he says, Rabbi continues to explain, Zeh hadon es yitzrei. This is one who has judged and brought to trial their evil inclination. For Yetzer Hara, they brought him to trial, and a tzaddik judged them and says, okay, you have to do teshuvah now. Instead of following blindly, following what Yetzer Hara said, he forced the Yetzer Hara to listen to his Yetzer Tov. So that's done as Yitzrei. Such a person will merit the Shekhinah as a crown on their head when Mashiach comes. The next thing the Gemara says, U'liyoshev ala mishpat, explaining the next words, and that who sits in judgment, who is Yoshev ala mishpat, zeh hadon din emes la'amitoy. This is a judge who judges truthfully. He judges a true halacha truthfully. A judge has to be careful in two things. First of all, he has to be very careful on the front end. when witnesses come, you got to interrogate them. You got to try finding fact proof, fact check each other till you could be for sure that all the facts that you received are accurate. And the second thing is on the back end. The judge has to make sure that when he judges, when he finds the reason, what he's going to rule, it should be accurate without making any mistakes. So that's the terminology here in the Gemara. Emes la'amitai is truth, and emes la'amitai, the truth of the truth. Meaning should be truth both on the front end, meaning what he receives, and he also makes sure that for himself, he's judging truthfully. That's how Tosfos explains this term, emes la'amitai. There's other mefarshim. Maral explains, Maral of Prague, in the Sefer Gur Aryeh, that there is such a thing called Shuddha Daini. There's certain situations where a judge is allowed to judge according to his own discretion. Meaning, you can have like a magistrate judge, which is not really judging solely according to the law, right? That you go to a real judge. What's a magistrate? They make a agreement. They make, they have a guidelines, but they could use their own discretion how to judge things. So it's called Shuddha Daini. And how is such a thing? How is Shuddha Daini? In which situations it's called for? So that is a whole discussion from the Rishonim and the Achronim. So that's called Din Emes, a true judge. But it's not called Emes La'amitai, the ultimate truth, because at the end of the day, you're judging according to his own discretion. So it says, one who's done Emes La'amitai, the truth of the truth, meaning that even when he judges for himself on his own discretion, he's also judging according to the way of the Torah. Means when you are given power by the Torah to judge in a certain way, in order to put that aside and to judge according to the law of the Torah, takes a certain feeling of bittul, of putting yourself on the side. And such a person is merited that he will receive a crown by Hashem when Mashiach comes, after saying Bir Hashem. That's how the Maral explains. All right, what other qualities does a tzaddik need to have the Shechina being a crown on his head when Mashiach comes? V'legvura, the next word in the pasuk, says V'legvura, and those who have strength. These are Zehames Gaber al Yitzray. This is the one who fights and controls who's Yetzer Hara. The Rashi explains that if you look at the word over here, it says Meskaber be Yitzray, not al Yitzray. Rashi says be Yitzray, not on his Yetzer Hara, but be can mean in or with his Yetzer Hara, meaning that he, not just the previous thing we said is that he wins over, he judges the Yetzer Hara. Here it says that he uses the Yetzer Hara as a tool, meaning he takes the power of the Yetzer Hara, of the Nefesh Bahamis, the animal, which is a lot of Shar Koche Kasher, you have a lot of power, and using that to further the goals and further the means of the Yetzer Tov. It's not just he's not doing an Avera, but more than that, he's going and he's forcing his Yetzer Hara to join him in doing a mitzvah. So that's another quality of someone who's going to have the Shechina on his head when Mashiach comes. Next, it says, go back to the pasuk, the verse, Meshive Milchama Sha'ara, those that turn back the battle at the gate. Who is that referring to? What type of quality is that they will have the Shechina on their head when Mashiach comes? Says the Gemara, Meshive Milchama, the ones who turn back the battle, Shenoisin v'noisin b'mechamta shel Torah, is referring to those who have a discussion in the battle of Torah, a war in the battle of Torah. Rabbi Sobasing from Ithaca says a story about how one time his father and his he grew up in Belgium, and his grandfather came to visit. And so he's a young child and he's laying in his bed. Suddenly he hears shouting and screaming. His father and his grandfather are shouting and screaming at each other. And they're arguing. He got so scared. What's going on? Why is his father and his father-in-law both screaming at each other? Maybe it was a father and son. And he went out. He didn't want to go to see them, but like he peeked, and they were learning. Meaning they were learning, and they were fighting. They were screaming at each other, fighting with each other. I remember when I was in Ali Torah, and so we had Rabbi Peretz Hecht, the younger brother of Rabbi JJ Hecht. He called himself shy, but he was sort of loud. He was a Hecht. He was loud and dynamic. And he was already long retired. He was in his 80s, probably mid 80s at that point. But every single day he was in yeshiva in the morning, and the whole day he would learn with Bachrim. He would call over Bachrim one by one. He would learn with them. People which needed a little boost, a lot of energy. And so he would get so involved. You could hear him from across. You have 250 people sitting in the zal, and you hear him from across the room. We would go over to some of the Magidei Shiurim, the ones who were giving Shiurim, and he would get so heated up talking with them, and he would give them the slap on the back. How could he say such a thing? This is called Mechamta Shel Torah, the war of Torah. So those who give and take in the war of Torah. Why is it called Meshivim Melchama? Those who return to war. Why is it called returning to war? Seemingly, you're making a new war. You're making a war in Torah. Now, throughout history, we've had hundreds of examples of major disagreements in Torah. Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz, who we quote very often, had major disagreements with Rabbi Yaakov Emden, whom we also quote very often. The Get Mikliva, there's so many machlokas in which some of them even tore apart Klal Yisrael. So those who make war is different than those who meshivim melchama. It's called orchei melchama, making war, or meshivim melchama, those who return to the war. What's the difference? And the term the Gemara uses over here is meshivei milchama, those who return. Meshivei is like yeshiva, returning, shuva. In the early generations, the first time there was a machlokas, disagreement, was Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. That's the first time we ever had disagreements in Torah, in halacha. Until then, there was always one opinion. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were the very first ones. Now, once the halacha was ruled, like Beis Hillel, now this war that they had, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, quieted down. No longer do we have this war. In the later generations, the Chachamim, the sages of the later generations, were mishive, they returned the war to its original status. Meaning, okay, halacha is like Beis Hillel, but did Beis Hillel mean this, or did Beis Hillel mean that? And the difference in halacha is A or B. Right? So they're not disagreeing, saying we have a third opinion against Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, but rather they're examining and analyzing the opinion of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel itself. Did they talk about this situation or that situation? So it comes out that they were mishive. They returned the war of Torah, which was already quieted down, and they reignited it. They rejuvenated it. After that quieted down, came the later generations, and the cycle started again, and they returned the war to its place. And so too it is in all the generations. So no one's coming up with a new agreement. That's orchei melchama. That's not a good thing. But meshivim melchama, returning the argument, returning the war, is returning, meaning delving into the words of the previous generations. That's called meshivei melchama. A disagreement which you had in the previous generations, and this, you are just merely returning it. That's from the Ben Yehoyada.
Just like you have people, really great rabbis who would be debating actually what the Rambam meant, right? So there's, in his day, it's possible that they knew exactly what he meant. They don't say, oh.
Correct. Maamar says, Sha'ara. Shara, last words in this pasuk, to the gate. Those who turn back the battle, Shara, at the gate. What do you mean to turn back at the gate? What's the gate mean? Elu Talmidei Chachamim. These are the Torah scholars, which are like those who are the gatekeepers of the Beis Medrash. The word Sha'ara comes from the word Sha'arim, gates of the Shul. Shemashkimin umarivin, they are the early arrivers and the late leavers, and the ones who close up. They arrive when it's still dark, to the Beis Medrash to learn, and they leave after it's dark as well. And they come to learn from the morning. It's from when it's opening up until it's dark, till it's night. You remember Shlomo Marciano, Al Shalom, he would always open up for the early minyan in Shari Torah in the morning, right? And minyan's Shlomo Marciano. He never missed a day, right? But this idea of opening up, he'll be the first in shul and the last to leave. A Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar who has this aptitude, is one who will have the crown of the Shechina in the future when Mashiach comes.
He actually seen the Baba Sali when he was a little kid.
Yes.
He actually saw the Baba Sali.
Who did? Oh yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Wow. Continues the Gemara, explaining the next verse, L'ruach mishpat la'yoshev, and for a spirit of judgment for him. V'gam eile b'yayin shagu. These also, even these tzaddikim, even these righteous people who wake up early and go to sleep late because they're learning Torah, they win over their Yetzer Hara. They hold themselves very humbly. Even these people, the gam eile bayayin shagu, says the verse. Even these people stumble through wine, uvashecher ta'u, and staggered through strong drink. Kayin ve'navi, even the priest and the prophet, shagu bashecher, they stumbled through beer, through drink. Nivlu min yayin, they are confused because of the wine. Tom min hashecher, they stagger, they fall over because of strong drink. Shagu baraya, their vision is mistaken. They can't see straight. Paku pelilia, they totter, they fall over in judgment. So now the Gemara will explain this verse as well. Amra midas adin lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Here's an episode which happened. The spirit of judgment, the attribute of justice, meaning Gevura, with Chesed, we have Gevura. So the Gevura of Shemayim, the Midas Hadin, the attribute of justice said in front of Hashem, Yiboyne Shalayla, master of the world. Ma nishtano elu me'elu. What's the difference between these people, the Jewish people, and these people, the nations of the world? Why are the Jewish people going to be so deserving of so much goodness and kindness and reward in the future? How are they any different than the nations of the world? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem answers, Yisrael asku b'Torah. What do you mean? The Jewish people occupied themselves learning Torah. Uma sa'olam lo yasku b'Torah. The nations of the world did not occupy themselves with learning Torah. So there's a big difference between the two nations, and therefore the Jews are deserving of reward. The attribute of justice was not satisfied. It said back to Hashem, Amar Lei, it said back to Hashem, the words of the pasuk, the words of the verse we just read. Ta'u min hashecher, they staggered from the wine. Paku pelilia, they have tottered in judgment. It says, even the Jewish people have been learning Torah, even the priest, even the prophet, they have all stumbled with wine. They aren't any better than the nations of the world. They might learn Torah, but they still have the same vices and the same temptations as the rest of the world. And he uses the word paku pelilia. And there are those among the Jewish people who are Rishayim, or evildoers, and they deserve Gehenna. So Hashem, don't be so kind to the whole people. They also have evildoers. And ain paku ela Gehinnom. And the word paku means, the word paku pelilia, they totter, means it refers to Gehenna, purgatory, to hell. How do you see that? Because we had a pasuk before. Remember we said about the 7 woman prophetesses. One of them was Abigail, who married David. Abigail was first married to Naval HaKarmeli, the Israelite.
Mhm.
And when David went to Naval cursed David, so David went to kill Naval, and he took his men with him, and they were all traveling, on the way to kill Naval. And then Abigail came and stopped him, and we had the whole story at length. And she asked David, "Spare Naval's life. Hashem will take care of him for you. Marry me afterwards." And then he says, "And this shall not be a stumbling block to you or an offensive heart." Meaning, if you have relations with me, or if you kill Naval unnecessarily, you're going to get Gehenna. You're going to receive. You're going to be punished for it. So the word fuka, which Abigail uses over here, let this not be a fuka, a stumbling block, comes from the same word in this pasuk, which means paku. It's spelled the same, pekuf, which means tottering. And just like over there, Abigail was telling David, let this not be a stumbling block for you, that you should receive Gehenna, you should receive a punishment in Gehenna because you have killed Naval unnecessarily, or had married me when you're not allowed to. So Abigail stopping David from killing Naval HaKarmeli and says that you shouldn't go to Gehenna and should not be a stumbling block from you. And ve'ein pelilia, the last word in the pasuk, pelilia, means judgment. And he brings a pasuk which has that, which it says, Shnemar v'nasan b'flilim. This is in Parshas Mishpatim. It says when two men are fighting, and one of them harms the other, and when one of their wives gets involved, so they have to go to the judges to estimate what the damages are. So it says v'nasan b'flilim, uses the word flilim. So the word pelilia in this pasuk, in this verse, means judgment. It says you go to the judges, and therefore you must be judged. So therefore, the attribute of judgment is saying to Hashem that why are the Jewish people so deserving of goodness and kindness and reward? There's also evildoers who deserve to be judged. And what it seems like from the maskana, from the outcome of the Gemara, is that Hashem agreed with the attribute of justice. And it's true that the Rishei Yisrael, the evildoers of the Jewish people, do receive Gehenna. They do receive punishment in Gehenna for their sins that they do. But of course, it's not actually a punishment, right? Because Hashem is not out to punish. Rather, it's a cleansing process where Hashem just cleans up their neshama in order that they could eventually receive Gan Eden, receive the world to come. Okay, being as it is several days before Gimel Tammuz, and also just the PSA tomorrow, Mr. Hashem will be starting at 11:15. Because me and Mr. Nadish, we're going to my daughter's graduation, kindergarten graduation tomorrow. So just to give it extra time, we'll start at 11:15 tomorrow.
Okay.
So being as it's before Gimel Tammuz, and so we'll continue next week with the Kuntres Umaayon, but today is Monday. There's a Shiur today Tuesday, and then Wednesday, there won't be a Shiur because I'm going on the bus to New York. It's going from Pittsburgh. Thursday, it's up to you if you want to Shiur or not. I'm saying Thursday, I'll be back in Mirz Hashem. And then it will be Friday, where Rabbi Darren might be here, or might not. He's still up in the air deciding.
So this is the last day. Is the next week?
No. Tomorrow she will be.
Tomorrow.
No, there'll still be tomorrow. and then Wednesday, no. The Thursday can still be,
No,
no, the Thursday can still be. But
so
there's Wednesday for sure, no.
anyone doesn't want Thursday? Thursday, Friday, or Thursday?
Thursday, Friday will be a shiur, Mr. Hashem, and Thursday. So I'm just going to,
So tomorrow is 11:15.
tomorrow will be 11:15.
So I'm not understanding about the question on Thursday. What's the question that we wouldn't?
I'm saying, what's the reason why not? If anybody's going to be out of town, but okay, just. So I'm going to go through several ideas today and tomorrow about ideas of what does it mean, preparation for Gimel Tammuz, what does a day of Gimel Tammuz mean to us, what does a Rebbe mean to us, and what does it mean, how can we be connected to a Rebbe even nowadays. So I'll go through several different ideas. So there's a letter of the Rebbe where the Rebbe compares a Rebbe to a wagon driver who has a very big wagon. And there's enough room in this wagon for anyone who wants to join, all the Chassidim who want to join, anyone who wants to connect himself to a Rebbe. What does that mean? It means that a chassid is somebody who is called a meschaserim koina. You're not stagnant. You're constantly progressing, constantly moving. Now, how does a chassid constantly move? If you connect yourself to the source of elikos, godliness, which is living, which is alive. When a chassid connects to a Rebbe, this is the Rebbe said this in the year 1950. There's the Jewish people compare it to a body, and there's a head of the body, which is the Rebbe, and there's a feet and the and the hands, which are the different people who do different things. A head of the body without a hand, God forbid, a person could still survive. Without a head, a person cannot survive. So when somebody comes to Rebbe and asks for a bracha or asks for advice in service of Hashem, not because the Rebbe is an expert in this field, right? Rather, it's because that a Rebbe is called an neshama klalis, a general soul, similar to a head which runs all the functions of the body, and every part of the body is directly connected every moment to the head. And in a similar manner, a Rebbe was a Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the leader of B'nai Yisrael. That's what a Rebbe stands for, Rabbi Rosh B'nai Yisrael. So the Rebbe is the one who leads the person. And there's two, so every single Jewish person has to have a connection to him in one way or another. Either it could be in a way of goodness and kindness, or it could be in a different type of way. But the Rebbe is always constantly with those who are connected to him. And every single moment, if a person just thinks about it for a short time, this should bring a person to have major excitement or encouraging a person. You should know you're not alone. You know, one of the biggest things people suffer from is loneliness, right? When they're by themselves. And that comes from the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara tries disturbing the person, not because the Yetzer Hara has any gain or the person has a gain, but rather that's what the Yetzer Hara does. So the Yetzer Hara always tries to get the person discouraged. So when a person thinks about and realizes that I'm connected to the Rebbe, and being connected is I'm never alone. I'm always constantly with the Rebbe. That itself should be enough to encourage a person. A Rebbe is called a Roya Neman, like Moshe Rabbeinu, the faithful shepherd. Faithful shepherd means two things. First of all, that you guard your flock, you take care of all the people, and also that you a shepherd of faith. You teach the people and give them emunah, give them belief in Hashem. But Moshe Rabbeinu, he was both. The Jewish people needed food, they brought down the money. The Jewish people needed water, he made the well. The Jewish people needed protection, clothing. He took care of it with the clouds. The Jewish people went to war. Either Moshe Rabbeinu led them himself, Moshe Rabbeinu directed the war. The idea, so he took care of the physical needs of all the people, but he was also called Moshe Rabbeinu. Dovi, was Moshe Rabbeinu an Ashkenazi or a Sephardi?
He was both.
He was a Sephardi. If it would have been an Ashkenazi, he would have been called Moshe Rabinovich. It's called Moshe Rabbeinu. Rabbeinu means our teacher. He taught us Torah. So in order to receive from Moshe Rabbeinu, you couldn't you could have sang and rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm not going to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. And those Jews, when they received at the far end, you could say. They received that to walk far away to get the mun. And those who were connected in learning Torah, or learning from Moshe Rabbeinu, they were part of the bracha. Says, this is a bracha which Moshe Rabbeinu blessed the Jewish people. Now, all the Rebbeim, they didn't only focus on those who are part of the club, part of the inner circle, all the Rebbeim. They focus on every single Jewish person, whoever they are. It says Moshe Rabbeinu, it's called the Goyal Rishon, the first Redeemer, and the Goyal Acharon, and the last Redeemer as well. And it says in Shema, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "V'nesati esev v'sadcha levamtecha." I will give grass in your fields, levamtecha, even to the animals. Moshe Rabbeinu is busying himself with the animals of every single person to make sure there's enough grass for everybody. But in a spiritual sense, you have different types of neshamas. You have souls called Zera Adam, which come from a source above called Adam, of men, which are more spiritual, the holy souls, Talmidei Chachamim. And then you have Zera Behema, less learned ones, the ones who aren't such great Torah scholars. These Jewish people, their souls are called Zera Behema. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "V'nesati esav," I'll give sustenance, levamtecha, even to the Zera Behema. B'sadcha in your fields, levamtecha, to the animals. Even a Jew who's not on the caliber, who's not necessarily sitting inside learning from Moshe Rabbeinu, even to them, Moshe Rabbeinu will give. Whether it'll be directly, or if they don't want to see directly, it'll be indirectly. The idea of a Rebbe in every generation, was the Moshe Rabbeinu of every single generation, is to occupy themselves with every single individual Jew, even those who are far away, even those who are not just far, but those who are doing the opposite of anything, which represents what a Rebbe would represent. Even Jews who are going against the Torah and would be chayav and would be obligated to have all the punishments of the Torah, whether it's kares, and he says bezdin, or death from bezdin. For every single one of them, a Rebbe is there. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Anochi oimei ben Hashem uvenechem." I will be the go-between between you and Hashem. The Jewish people complained that Hashem the revelation in Har Sinai is too great. We can't handle it. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, "I will be the go-between between the two of you." So similarly, a Rebbe is there for every Jew, even a Jew who is going through tough times, even a Jew who is not following the path of his Yetzer Tov, is rather following the path of his Yetzer Hara. And the reason is that the Rebbe is an neshama klalius, a general soul. In every generation, you have a soul, which every soul is a spark, as you say, is an extension of every larger soul, a general soul. It says, B'nai Yisrael, the Jewish people, stands for Yesh Shishim Liba Oisos Torah. There is 600,000 letters in the Torah. And we had in last week's parsha, it said, Parshas Baloischa, so not last week, 2 weeks ago at this point, and Parshas Baloischa, Moshe Rabbeinu told Hashem, when the Jewish people were complaining, he said, Sheish Meyos Elef Ragli, for 600,000 Jews, Ha'am, the nation, Asher Noichi Bekirbai, which I am among them. the way Chassidus explains this is the people Asher Noichi, which I, Moshe Rabbeinu, Bekirba, are in them. There's Morinayim, the Menachem of Chernobyl. He writes that, what does this mean? It means that in every single Jew, there is a part of Moshe Rabbeinu, a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu inside of every single Jew. And that spark of Moshe Rabbeinu in their neshama, in their soul, gives them excitement, gives them chayas, and gives them emunah, gives them belief in Hashem. And sometimes you'll have a very thick covering, and that part of Moshe Rabbeinu inside of every Jew is covered over. At other times, it becomes revealed. So those who are connected to the Rebbe, that part of their neshama, of their soul, becomes revealed.
Excuse me, I want to just make a difference, in a sense,
Sure.
between Chas v'sholom, L'olen Rachman Islam, 1,000 times other religions that have a gatekeeper. In order to get to God, you need a gatekeeper. And if he says no, it's no. But the Rebbe is a facilitator. His goal, his job is to get you closer and closer. He's mavatal himself so that you can go like in front of the line, or you can get higher, higher. So it's the totally opposite of what the Goyim and the Goy Shavel thinks about a leader.
You're saying by the other nations of the world, you can't connect to Hashem without the leader.
Yep.
Meaning by you have no natural connection. The only way you can connect is through the leader. And here we're saying that you already have a connection. And even if you try denying it, you already have it. And the Rebbe is just a facilitator bringing out that connection. Correct. Right. So just an example, there is a certain yeshiva, which is not a Chassidic yeshiva in any sense of the word. And there was one time this happened in the 70s, in the 70s. This yeshiva was actually on the brink of closing. On the brink of closing. They owed a major debt to the bank, and it was already a Friday. Monday, they had to bring a certain amount of money to the bank, or the building would have been repossessed and it would have closed down. And this person, one of the people in charge of the yeshiva, decided for some reason to call up the mosquito, so the secretary of the Rebbe, to ask for a bracha. And when they called up, the secretary answered, and the secretary says, "Hold on." And when that would happen, probably would be that they'll go back and forth to the Rebbe. But he said, "How much do you owe?" He says, "We have to pay the bank. I think it was $50,000 by Monday." And so he says, "Okay, are you? Will they take a personal check?" And said, "Yeah." And they told him, "Come in and take everything. And come in on Sunday, and to the secretary, and they'll give you everything." And they came, and this the secretary of on Sunday went to Crown Heights, went to the mosquitoes of the Rebbe, and collected a $50,000 check. And they went on Monday, and they paid up the bank, and the yeshiva is still open till today. It's a very flourishing yeshiva, right? It's quite well known. They made a journal not too long ago of all the history of the yeshiva. Nothing mentioning of this, obviously, right? A Rebbe isn't someone who only cares about their own circle, what's good for them. They care about every single Jew. There was a Rabbi Castell. He's a shliach in the Tzarek Gludas Chabad, and so when he was a yeshiva student, he gets called in one time by the maskiros, by the secretary of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe tells him, and the secretary tells him the Rebbe received a letter from a certain woman. Her husband passed away. She is very poor. She lives in the Bronx, and she wants to send her son to at least a Jewish school instead of a public school. And the boy's already college age. He wants to go to Yeshiva University. But they're very proud people, and they don't want to accept any tzedakah, any charity. So the secretary said, the Rebbe told him, Rabbi Castell, that what you should do is you should knock on the door, pretend that you just happen happen to be going by, not that you happen to be in the area. Have a conversation, talk to them for a few minutes, have a discussion. What are you going to be doing next year? This boy, I want to go to Yeshiva University, and say, I have some connections there. I could arrange it for you. I know some scholarships. Do you want me to be in touch? And just offer it. And that's what he did. He knocked on the door of his house. He says, "Yeah, I'm knocking. I'm visiting everyone here in this area." He spoke with them casually. What are you doing next year? I'm going to YU. I want to go to YU, but I can't afford it. So, I happen to know somebody on the board there of the scholarship committee. Maybe I could work it out for you. And they were very happy. And this boy ended up going to Yeshiva University, to YU. Now, one thing the Rebbe's secretary told him was, you have to keep it a secret. Afterwards, he told him, keep it a secret. They shouldn't find out. This boy shouldn't find out who's paying for him. Right? Because it was all being paid for by the Rebbe's mosquitoes, by the Rebbe's secretary. The Rebbe. And later on, during the year, there was a Shabbaton in Crown Heights with many Pegisha, college students came. And so somebody, one of the college students at the Pegisha gets up and asks a question. And he says, how come Lubavitch only sends people to their own institutions? How come they don't, send people to other institutions as well? They're the only ones out there. He looks closer to see who it is. And it's that exact boy, this boy who's currently in YU, and the Rebbe is paying for his tuition there. But of course, he couldn't say a thing because he wasn't allowed to say anything. So the Rebbe is somebody who doesn't only care about their own internal, the Rebbe is someone who works and looks out for every single Jew, regardless of who they are. So we'll continue Mirz Hashem tomorrow, 11:15. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.